Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
It's bracket time. We break down the hardest region to predict. We'll give you insight into the next big upset and how exactly are the Bengals going to build a Super Bowl team now. I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
The bracket always provides us with an unpredictable region. There's the region of death, all sorts of fun traits that we can ascribe to these regions. The Locked On College Basketball Bracket Breakdown Show broke down which region will be the toughest to fill out.
Speaking of the South, I'm officially dubbing the South region as the region dictated by which version of the Fighting Bruce Pearls will actually show up. So it's also where we'll see Louisville take on Creighton, Michigan State against Bryant, Texas A&M versus Yale, Marquette, New Mexico, Iowa State versus Lipscomb, and Ole Miss taking on the winner of San Diego, North Carolina. Isaac, it'll be North Carolina, just saying. But ultimately, you've got to look at that 5-12 matchup. That's the one for me. It's Michigan versus UC San Diego. These are your two top 30 defensive teams in the country in what should be a game that could easily be a second-round contest as the programs rank in the top 36 of Ken Pom. Can Michigan's big man duo give the Tritons issues, or will San Diego's top 30 tempo dictate? Get your popcorn ready.
Here's the thing, Michigan, 2 7-footers. That is such a unique challenge matchup-wise. Look, I got to get in my shout-out for the Big Ten. Let's move on to the South region, though, Gordon, with some of your picks. You believe in Ole Miss. What makes you so confident in them, and especially when you've seen how good this SEC has been this season?
Yeah, that's basically it. I mean, being able to play through that conference, they beat each other up all year. But Ole Miss has wins over Tennessee, Alabama, Kentucky, teams that we've talking about potentially making it to the Final Four. I think Chris Beard is a really good coach. I think he's tremendous. And I love their balanced scoring. Another team, they have 6 guys that average double figures. So you're leaning on a lot of different people for production. And I love that about them.
It's harder to game plan for when you've got multiple players who can hurt you in multiple ways with that type of depth in their scoring. What do you make, Isaac, of Ole Miss?
What I love about Ole Miss is part of the reason they're able to do all that is because Chris Beard is one of the best coaches in the entire nation. We were talking about earlier how much coaching affects things. Chris Beard has done it every stop he's been at, and he's done it since he's come back to Ole Miss. And I love now that Texas is in the SEC and he's got to go face the Longhorns. But, man, having Chris Beard in your corner is a massive asset for the Reds.
We also need to acknowledge just how good the SEC was in basketball this season. 14 teams made the NCAA tournament, setting a new record for the most bids from a single conference. Incredibly impressive basketball conference, maybe now based on the season they had in football, who knows. I do want to move on to Monique in the South region, and I do want to talk about that team from the Big Ten, Michigan. Interesting squad. They lose their last 3 regular season games, but then go on a run and win the Big Ten tournament. We just heard a little bit about those 2 7-footers they've got in Vlad Golden and Danny Wolf. What do you think about Michigan's path forward as you look at the South region?
I mean, we've talked about momentum earlier, and I think Michigan has all the momentum, all the energy right now. Looking at them potentially facing an Auburn, Auburn having 3 critical losses towards the end of their season, I feel like it kind of exposed them in some ways. Turnovers, missed free throws, and just hustle plays and clutch moments. And I see those are things that I'm seeing Michigan capitalize on.
We haven't talked a lot about Auburn yet, but losing 3 of those last 4 games, possible injury factors. What do you think the outlook is, Isaac, for Auburn, the Tigers?
Well, I said it previously, they're still my national champion, right? I have been comparing them a lot to the 07 Gators who sleptwalked through that through that season. I really think that Auburn's going to be fine. I loved Bruce Pearl's comments when he was asked about this after their loss the other day. He was like, "Oh, we should be like just playing into it." Like basically, I'm not worried about this team. Look at what we've done to everybody we've played all season long. They have historically raced through everything they've done. So many quad 1 wins. It's insane. They're going to be fine. I'm not worried about it. But you got to go out and do it on the floor, and we'll see what happens later this week.
Gordon, from what you've seen from all of the number 1 seeds, which one do you feel the strongest about?
Which number 1 seed do I feel
Florida,
the strongest about?
Duke, we just were talking about Auburn.
Yeah, I think out of the number 1 seeds, I feel the strongest about Duke.
Okay.
I think just what they were able to do, especially at the end of the season, how dominant they were. They've done it not only in their conference, they've gone out of conference, and they've dominated teams. The Cooper Flag injury is a big question mark that we talked about at the beginning of the show. I think he's going to be fine, and I think they make it all the way.
Isaac, to revisit your bracket really quick,
Yeah.
I think a big question is which Michigan team is going to show up on the floor. I know Monique just pointed out momentum, but still it's been a little bit of a Jekyll and Hyde situation with some inconsistencies this season, some turnover problems. What's going to be key for the Wolverines?
It's that point guard play you were just talking about, Kylan. I like that. I love the Twin Towers. Like, we're talking about the Admiral and Tim Duncan here, right? Like, we're going back to San Antonio, but this team won't be going to San Antonio for the Final Four because while I love Vlad Golden and Danny Wolf, my issue with Michigan is their point guard play. Also, Roddy Gale tweaked his hammy in the first half of that Big Ten championship game. That could be an issue. And those soft tissue, man, that'll get you. It's hard to come back from. Both of these basketball players are nodding their head. Yeah, lingering, Gordon says. And so ultimately, I think it's point guard play that dooms Michigan. But what a first season for Dusty May in Ann Arbor.
Here's the thing. Who cares about point guard play when you have a point center who's 7 foot like Danny Wolf? He can pass the ball and facilitate like a point guard. His skill set is really incredible for a guy who is 7 feet tall. I just think it's crazy when you watch him play, the skill set that he has. All right, Andy, we got to get your takes on the South region. I want to hear your take on San Diego State. Why you got them winning too?
Yeah, well, I think Isaac pointed out earlier that a lot of times we do see this happen where a team wins their first game and then they end up getting an opportunity to take on often a 6 seed or a 5 seed, depending where they get seeded, and they end up getting a W there. San Diego State, a team tough, physical. Brian Dutcher's done this before. Obviously led this team to a national championship game appearance very recently. So I wouldn't be surprised to see this team get some momentum. I think they can. They're tough enough and physical enough. I think they can handle North Carolina and their big men situation, which has improved recently. Van Allen Lubin has been playing very well, but Magoon Gwath, if he's healthy, he's a tremendous shot blocker as a freshman, 2.5 per game for him, and the backcourt combination of Nick Boyd and Miles Byrd is just good enough for San Diego State to beat North Carolina, and I think they'll carry that momentum into a win over Chris Beard and Ole Miss as well.
Something we haven't really expanded upon is the outlook for Yale. What do you make of that Ivy League school possibly making some noise here in the Big Dance? Yeah,
well, Yale's done this before too, right? I mean, this 13 seed taking on a 4-seeded SEC team. That happened last year. Yale got the W that time, so I think we'll see a very similar situation. Texas A&M, the 4 seed here, a program that is really good despite missing so many shots. Like, they miss so many shots. Their offense is not particularly efficient, but they are very, very good on the glass. Buzz Williams' team, when Wade Taylor's not shooting well, they can struggle a little bit offensively. We've seen that before. Zurich Phelps is great, but I just think Yale has the personality. James Jones, phenomenal coach. Again, a lot of the guys are back from a team that did this last year, so I think they're ready for this. I think we've seen A&M be inconsistent, and I think if they don't come out firing and having a great game, I would not be surprised to see Yale do exactly what they did last year once again.
All right, we're going Ivy League. Great stuff. Appreciate it.
Hey, Kylan, do you remember who led Yale to that win over Auburn last year?
What? Who? Where?
Danny Wolf, now at Michigan.
Right,
Full
exactly.
circle
The
with this
Ivy
thing.
League transfer. I love it. We're bringing it all back.
Check out the bracket breakdown on Amazon Fire TV channels and stay up to date all year on college basketball by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today, of course, and Locked On College Basketball on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Your Locked On Sports Today. Coming up, we give you the upset pick that nobody else is looking at. Before we do that, Paul George is done for the year. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. There's always that 5-12 you got to pick, and usually 2, maybe 3. That 4-13 matchup, FanDuel makes it easy to back them with spreads, totals, game props. With tournament games happening almost every day, there's always something exciting to bet on. The FanDuel app is simple to use. And when I win, I get paid instantly. No waiting around. Looking at the first 4, we've got controversy. North Carolina, the most controversial team in the tournament, and they take on San Diego State tonight. The Tar Heels are favored by 5.5 points. We'll see if they reward the committee for placing them in the tournament. Visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoop action all tournament long.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the bracket breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
Paul George will be shut down for the rest of the season in Philadelphia. Remember that super team the Sixers were putting together? Not looking so great. Now it is a lesson in tanking. George received injections in his left adductor muscle and left knee Monday, according to the team. George spent the last couple weeks consulting with doctors on the best treatment options for his groin and knee injuries. The 34-year-old has played through groin, finger, and knee ailments this season, dealing with multiple injuries over the past month. Sources said George took painkiller injections for 5 consecutive games before the NBA All-Star break in February. On the court, the Warriors hosted the Nuggets in a marquee matchup in the West.
Kolsky, this was kind of it's the old fruit roll-up game. You know, there's 6 feet of unraveling here, whether it's the onion, peeling back the layers. We got to peel this one back one piece at a time. Obviously, storylines, Aaron Gordon, Jimmy Butler, who the other day said, you'll know when I have one of my games. Was this one of his games, or at least did he try to make it one of his games? Defense, excellent. Let's talk about Draymond Green's defense. Steph Curry, kind of a no-show today. I thought he really struggled out there for the majority of this game. And then the Warriors did not shoot the basketball well. But I think the glaring takeaway from this game is the fact that the Warriors just kicked the ball away over and over again. And here's the thing about this team. We've seen that they can win not shooting the ball well. And today was not well at all. 8 of 33 from deep. That's 24%. 15 of 27 from the line. That is 55%. They started 2 of 9 from the line and 1 of 14 from deep. It was ugly, but they found ways to win. When you turn it over 20 times and you get out rebounded by 14, you're not winning any basketball games, even against the Denver Nuggets, who are missing Jokic and Jamal Murray.
The Wolves hosted the Pacers, and it was bonkers.
The Timberwolves' 8-game win streak came to a close at the hands of none other than Obi Toppin on Monday night. I'm Ben Beacon, host of the Daily Locked On Wolves podcast. And the Wolves came back from a game they trailed by double digits to a Pacers team that's been struggling a little bit of late. Down 3 key rotation players. They came back in the second half after Rudy Gobert and Andrew Nembhard were both ejected in the third quarter after a brief altercation. Gobert with the flagrant 2. The Wolves were sparked, came back, took a nice lead in the fourth quarter. The Pacers came back and tied it, and ultimately in overtime, after Ant hit a couple of free throws to put the Wolves up 2 with under 10 seconds to play, Obi Toppin hits a fall-away three-pointer in the corner. Improbably, an improbable shot, an improbable night for Obi Toppin, making a career-high 7 three-pointers in the game. The Wolves could not score in a last-second Julius Randle attempt in the paint, and they lost by 2 to the Pacers in overtime. We're going to break the whole game down over at Locked On Wolves.
And the world of name, image, and likeness may be getting even more murky. The NCAA has agreed to permanently drop its rule prohibiting athletes from negotiating the terms of name, image, and likeness payments until after they enroll in school. The NCAA's now abandoned rule was designed to try and keep schools and booster collectives from using NIL deals as a recruiting incentive for incoming high school athletes and players in the transfer portal. Those schools and boosters were allowed to speak generally about the kind of financial opportunities that might be available on campus. They were technically prohibited from making a specific offer to an athlete until he or she was enrolled. And thank goodness the NCAA realized this was a nonsense rule that no one was following, I assume. Everybody loves picking the upset in their bracket. Which one will be the upset nobody knows about? Our bracket breakdown crew tried to nail it down.
Absolutely.
You've got Drake earning an upset over Missouri. That's an intriguing pick.
Yeah, I really like this matchup. First of all, really big shout out to Dennis Gates in Missouri. This is a team that did not win a single game in the SEC last year. They had 25 games in Dennis Gates' first year, did not win a game in the SEC last year. Coming into this year, the big conversation was, what is it going to look like? Are they going to be more like the team that was really good in the first year, more like the team that struggled last year? He built a fantastic roster, had a fantastic season, but they stumbled a little bit down the stretch, and I think momentum is so so important heading into the NCAA tournament. And Drake has it. This team has been fantastic all year long. 30-win team. We talked about them a little bit yesterday. Bennett Sturts coming from the Division II level, following his coach, Ben McCollum, who was also at the D2 level. Both those guys have been fantastic at their respective roles. I'm really excited about this Drake team. I think they have an opportunity to take down Missouri, who, again, has been stumbling a little bit. And I expect Drake to, we'll see what they do if they get Texas Tech in the second round. That's a much tougher matchup, especially if Tech is fully healthy, which as of right now, it sounds like they're going to have McMillan back. They're going to have a full roster there. I think JT Toppin's going to be too much for Drake, but I do expect them to win that first game against Missouri.
Drake and Missouri is interesting because you've got a Drake team that wants to slow you down and a Missouri team that wants to push pace. Yep. Who's going to be able to dictate the way that game goes could very well determine who ends up winning. Memphis losing to Colorado State is another pick that you have. Why is that? Yeah,
I think this is a really, really fun matchup between two mid-major programs as well as two really, really, really good players, potential All-American candidates. PJ Haggerty for Memphis, one of the leading scorers. I think he's a 21.5, 22 points per game this year. He's been fantastic, had a 40-point game not that long ago. Colorado State, Neat Clifford. If you haven't heard of Neat Clifford yet, folks, he's fantastic. He's going to be a first-round pick. Tremendous, versatile player, can do a little bit of everything. And I think the matchup between those two guys is going to be extremely fun. And again, we're talking momentum. Memphis, they did win their conference tournament, but it was not particularly pretty. They struggled with Tulane. They almost didn't get here. We were wondering, are we going to get a bid thief? Is somebody going to steal a bid? Did not end up happening as Memphis survived, got their 5 seed. We thought they were a little bit overseeded in that situation. Colorado State, meanwhile, has been absolutely rolling. They have been, I think they're a 9-10 game winning streak at this point, crushed Boise State in the Mountain West Conference Tournament Championship. They got all the momentum right now. They got a really good player in Neat Clifford. I think they're going to win this basketball game.
All right, well, Gordon, we're going to start with your Midwest region bracket breakdown. Xavier to the Sweet 16, a bubble team with maybe lacking some firepower in terms of the resume you've got going that far. What do you like about Xavier?
I do. This is another team I got a chance to watch live at MSG. One thing I really like about Xavier, they've got Zach Fremantle back. Since then, they've been playing a lot better. He's a difference maker, and he reminds me a lot of one of my former teammates, Matt Howard. Just does everything that you want a basketball player to do to help your team win the game. He's setting screens, he's rebounding, he's spacing correctly. He's also a post scorer, too, so a lot of teams, they like to switch now. Can't really do that with him because he's a bucket in the post. So I really like the way that they're playing now. I think they won 7 straight before going into the Big East tournament. And they have some big, strong, experienced guards as well. Another cat from Indianapolis. We know how to play in Indianapolis. He had 38 in the Big East tournament. So that's why I like Xavier.
Fremantle, that versatile big, I also think can be a mismatch nightmare for certain players. What do you make of Xavier not just making it in, but maybe making a run?
Well, what's interesting is since we instituted the first 4, that's 13 tournaments ago, 12 times a first 4 team has not only won that game, but advanced to win a second game. And so Gordon could be onto something here with Xavier. Look out for Ryan Conwell as well, who is an absolute stud to go along with Fremantle. I love that front court, back court synergy.
Check out the bracket breakdown on Amazon Fire TV channels and stay up to date all year on college basketball by subscribing to Locked On Sports today and Locked On College Basketball on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Coming up, the Bengals are going to build a Super Bowl team. How exactly? T. Higgins and Jamar Chase will get to play for the same team for a while longer. Well, it was a big financial swing for Cincinnati. It leaves us all with the question that Locked On Bengals seems confident will be answered favorably.
The idea that the Bengals defense was going to give up 3,000 points and be so awful because the Bengals paid T and Jamar. And like this idea that it wasn't the path to winning for this Bengals team. It just, people just don't understand. They have no concept of what these two mean to the Bengals. What the Bengals defense was last year. Like there's no one to pay. There's no one on defense where you're like, oh, well, they should go pay this guy. And are there free agents that we want them to go after? For sure. But that was never part of the, all right, well, pay this guy, not T, or go this route and delay Jamar. Like the Bengals' quickest path to winning an AFC North title, let alone an AFC title or a Super Bowl, was keeping Joe, Jamar, T. Now, there are other pieces they need to add on defense. Obviously, they need to draft well. Spoiler, they need to draft well regardless. Like all of these things that people will say need to happen regardless. They need to draft well. They need to be good at scouting defense. They need to find good value there. They need to get more out of their young players on defense. They need to get more out of the young players in general. And at the same time, I think that people went this route without realizing, like, yeah, Joe looked around, and if he thought that it made sense to go another route, it's not like they paid T and let Jesse Bates walk, or paid T and let Trey Hendrickson walk. Like, that's not what it is. And if they did, there's an age gap there, but it's not like they're letting 25-year-old Trey Hendrickson go, and they still don't have to. And so that's what I think is most annoying, is it's like, oh, well, the defense is going to suck. It's like, actually, paying T didn't impact the defense at all. What it did do is they kept their fourth best player on the roster.
If there's one thing I know covering the Packers, it is a team that pours financial resources and contract extensions into an offense around an elite quarterback and tries to draft and develop their way to a competent defense, at least a one competent enough to go win a Super Bowl. And for the Green Bay Packers from 2011 until present, that plan has failed. All the while, Green Bay has been one of the best draft and developed teams in the league. On the other side of the spectrum, the Cincinnati Bengals, who have one of the smallest scouting staffs, they have not done well in the draft lately. In fact, can you name the last good Bengals draft class that did not involve a top 5 pick? Was it 2017? Was it earlier than that? That's not great. It's not a great track record. So if you're pouring resources into the offense, hoping that you can manage the defense with draft picks, and all of your recent draft picks are not impacting your defense, it seems like a tough way to win. It's why I would have said, hey, T. Higgins, you don't impact this team as much as you'd impact another team. Let's convince someone to give us a first-round pick and take that $30 million, improve the defense, improve the offensive line. Because these top-heavy teams, they don't work. They don't. And finally, Brittany Skies knocked down the game-winning free throw, and Rose beat Vinyl in the unrivaled championship game Monday, capping the inaugural season of the Women's 3-on-3 Basketball League. Each player on the championship-winning club will get $50,000 in prize money, part of Unrival's goal of compensating its participants more than almost any other professional sports league for women. It was a fun season. You saw the clips going around social media. It has to be considered a success at this point. If you're catching this episode after hearing your favorite Locked On show, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Also, if you're a new subscriber to Locked On Sports Today, we're here for you with the biggest stories in sports every day. Coming up, will the Tar Heels still be dancing? So at least until tomorrow, stay locked on sports today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
Go to our video on demand. Click on sports at the top of your screen. There, you'll find past episodes of Locked On Sports Today, plus other Locked On shows on demand.